Hello guys, this is Flag coming at ya from the sub-basement of HelixxVR headquarters, and today I'll be reviewing Tactera. Tactera is a VR real-time strategy game that takes place inside of a futuristic command center on top of a holographic tabletop where you build, command, and deploy a variety of aircraft, tanks, bombers, and artillery along with other units, and use the advantages of this holographic war room to remotely view the battlefield while strategically leading your units to overtake the enemy. Tactera was originally released in May 2016 for the Gear VR and again on December 22nd, 2017 on Steam. This title was created by the developer McNeill and was the finalist for the 2015 Oculus Mobile VR Jam and holds a few other awards on the mobile platform. Tactera is a desktop and VR title that supports the HTC Vive, the Oculus Rift, and the Windows Mixed Reality headsets, along with full track touch controller support plus keyboard and mouse, allowing for standing, seated, and full room scale gameplay. Now, as a general rule, I always try to start out in the desktop mode of a VR title when it is available. And being that Tactera has such a feature, I thought it would make for a good gauge to see how well the title translates from pancake mode to VR. Upon loading the desktop mode, I was not surprised by the unorthodox method at which the mouse control was implemented. As with McNeill's other title, Skylight, the mouse does not translate relative to the on-screen cursor, but instead with a dot reticle that has offset the actual cursor, causing the interface to move in the fashion of a 360 video. Once I started the single-player campaign, I was greeted by the unsightly virtual battlefield that appeared as if it were quite a distance away. It was like I was looking at it through the wrong end of a telescope. That, along with the game pieces at the back of the playfield being occluded by those in the foreground, made this mode completely unplayable for me. After returning to the main menu, I went to the options panel and changed the positional settings to forward and up as much as I possibly could, and this seemed to fix everything except for the distance issue, which was better, but still not satisfactory. I played this mode for around 20 minutes before deciding I've had enough due to the strange mouse control and visual problems. I then decided to give the VR mode a try and started the same campaign. The visuals seemed to appear fine this time around, and going back to the options, I found that I could choose different table types, heights, and sizes. This was a nice touch, though the implementation was quite clunky, forcing you out of the game session entirely just to use the UI. In Tactera, you start out on a hexagonal grid with tank-shaped game pieces representing you and your opponents. The objective here is to strategically move your pieces to clash with the enemy in order to gain control of all occupied areas until you have seized the entire board. Each piece moved onto the occupied areas are representative to the amount of unit types you have available to you at the start of the battle portion of the game. If you move a game piece onto an enemy-occupied hexagon, it places that piece alongside that of the enemies, locking it down for battle. Now, while doing this, it is imperative to take care and not try to take an area that is completely enemy-occupied if you are only able to move one piece to that slot. This also applies to hexagons that you occupy with a single piece within enemy reach, as doing so will leave you outnumbered and completely vulnerable. Once all turns are taken on the initial hexagon grid, you will be prompted with one or more scenarios of combat. Each of these can range from 1 vs 1 to 3 vs 3 to everything in between, such as being outnumbered by the enemy or vice versa. All this is dependent on the number of game pieces set on the disputed territories. Once you've selected a battle scenario, you will need to choose 3 equipment types. There are several to choose from in several categories ranging from mechanized ground units such as tanks and anti-aircraft to combat aircraft and non-mobile units such as artillery, cannons, and missiles. There's also a weaponized blimps, stealth bomber, and a space-based satellite weapon system. You must take care in what you choose, as you will not be able to use these units again for 2 rounds following the one they are chosen for, even if you never get a chance to deploy them in the first place. You must also take care with the order that which you choose to load out, especially if you are in a 1 vs 2 or 1 vs 3 type scenario, since you only get the 1 unit type to deploy until you capture a base node, and only then will you get the option to deploy secondary units. Also, as you progress in a round, you may also have the option to upgrade specific unit types, though these upgrades are quite light and rarely come into effect before the match ends unless you play the larger maps in skirmish mode. The objective of the battle mode is to defend and take control of nodes by attacking them and then using the captured areas to manufacture and deploy new units. You do this until you've taken all nodes and destroyed the enemy, or the enemy has destroyed you. This part of the game can be particularly fun for the short run, but after a few playthroughs, the behavior of the AI becomes monotonous and highly predictable. At least for me it did. It is the same from one battle to the next, as the AI will always attack the node nearest it, and will not become a threat until your node happens to be the next one in the lineup. Choosing mobile units is a definite must, and you will not be able to capture without them. And much like Skylight, certain combinations will guarantee a win each and every game. But unlike Skylight, this title can actually be challenging due to its two-part nature. As far as comparing it to Command & Conquer, there's just too much different, or rather missing, to even come to that conclusion. For starters, the playstyle of Tactera is very simplistic, which isn't a bad thing since the title was originally developed for mobile VR, and I believe it was intended to be a casual experience. But this also takes it further away from the playstyles of real-time strategy titles such as Command & Conquer or the original Blizzard classic, Warcraft. In Tactera, you simply choose your units and deploy them on the battlefield to attack bases to build only the units that you chose from the beginning of the match. Aside from light upgrades, there's really nothing in the fashion of gathering resources, leveling, enhancing, or upgrading structures or units. There's no capturing enemy units, very little room for variety in your plan of attack, and there's no story or background, no fog of war, no ability to build or place objects. There's just a small open battlefield with a predetermined formation of capturable nodes, along with a predetermined placement of your chosen units. Comparing it to anything more complex than that does not help this title in any way and will only lead to disappointment for those looking for such an experience. As for Locomotion and Tactera, well, there is none. Though there are 4 separate options for tabletop playfield type. There is one for small standing, small seated, a large playfield, and then there's this room scale playfield which appears on the floor. There are also options to recenter and adjust position. These adjustments are quite finicky, but with some patience they do the trick. I was able to find the optimal position for the setup in probably around 2 minutes. As far as bugs are concerned, there is only the already mentioned broken desktop mode and the lack of player game pieces when loading the room scale game board. On the other hand, there are several design flaws that plague this title. The controller instructions, which tell you to hit the select button to choose instead of the trigger, is something that should not have been overlooked, as they are clearly still set up for the Gear VR. The lack of a localized options UI during gameplay so you could set volume and recenter play space is something that could make things much easier, but this is nothing major. There is a lack of the all-too-usual exit function, though. Why developers seem to forget this most basic option baffles me. I was taught that this is one of the first things you set up when creating any game or app UI. There are also a few less important ones that I will not be covering here, but it is quite evident that this title was not properly ported to PC. There was definitely more done to this title prior to port than was with Skylight, and I guess that's a slight plus in its favor. As far as the aesthetics in Tactera, well, the graphics are nothing special, but they look and feel fine for what the title is. The theme here is a holographic war room simulation, and the aesthetics match this theme quite well. The sound effects are also done in a pleasing manner. The music is something left to be desired, but that is probably more of a personal opinion than anything else. Now, as far as price versus content is concerned, I will have to say this title is significantly overpriced for what you get. Tactera is currently available on Steam for roughly $15, 15 euros or 11 pounds. Now the same title is available for the Gear VR for $9.99. And there is no difference in the content between the two versions, making this increase unfounded. In conclusion, I do not recommend Tactera, not because it isn't a decent game, but because it is not worth anything near the asking price. The title is lacking in being properly ported and has a broken game mode, yet it is going for a sub-premium price point in early access condition. The lack of content and the lack of replayability due to the complete lack of a multiplayer community, this title should be selling for, well, around $4.99 or less. Aside from that, if you find this title on sale for $5, then I say go for it. It's not a bad game and can become quite addictive for the short term. Well guys, if you found this title interesting and want to check it out further, I provided a link to it in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. If you didn't, well, hit that other button. If you want to see more videos like this one, please support us here at HelixxVR and press that subscribe button. It won't cost you a thing and the videos are free too. And don't forget to check out our other great videos on YouTube at HelixxVR, which is the channel you're on right now. The other guys work hard and create some really great content, live feeds, and giveaways on a daily basis. For more stuff HelixxVR, check the description below. Well, until next time guys, this is Flag, heading back to the basement. See ya!